Hi, welcome to the DM U&I podcast. This week, we are focused on people and in particular mental health. And for me, we're a people business. It's really important that we create that environment that actually allows people to thrive and to be themselves. So I'm joined today by two of my colleagues who have really helped DM with its mental health journey. They have also excelled themselves at DM and can tell you about exactly how we tick here. Listen on. Big welcome today to Jade and Josh, who are joining me to talk about mental health. DM has grown and changed and evolved over the years, as has the world. And mental health is really, really important to me and to the business. We've got nearly 600 people in the business now who come from all sorts of different walks of life. And we need to make sure we create that environment that is really enables them to thrive. So I've got Josh and Jade here with me today. The first question I'm going to ask you, and we'll start with Jade, is why are you here, Jade? What is it about mental health that it gives you is an interest for you?
So I've been at DM for about 11 years now, and I've seen the company grow and change, and to support people as individuals and look at people's motivations for why they're at work, about what's happening in their personal lives. When somebody says to me, I try not to bring it to work, and I'm like, no, absolutely. If there's something that is happening in your life that is going to impact your work, bring it to work, tell me about it. And to really kind of break down those walls that people feel they have to build up between their personal lives and their emotions to be able to do a job, because I think that emotions and people's motivations are really powerful, and bringing those into the workplace shouldn't always be seen as such a negative thing.
We'll come back to that. I want to talk about that in a bit. Josh, tell me about how did I manage to get you out of Birmingham? And before you say it, right, I know I'm paying you, but why are you here?
So I'm here as one of the mental health first aiders within DM. It's been a bit of a process kind of getting it up and running and getting it going, but it's been a fantastic service to add to the company. And as one of the mental health first aiders, we're here to help you with that. We're here to support. We're here to recognise that it's okay to not be okay, and how we can ultimately just help you to be the best person that you can be while you're here. We've all been through some form of mental health, whether you recognise it or you don't. Mm-hmm. And some things can be so small, really insignificant, that you wouldn't know. Mm-hmm. But then there's some things that actually can take a bigger toll, and it can affect your work life when you're here.
Yeah. So both of you mentioned there coming to work as your true self, and I think that bit of turning up as yourself is a key part of success. Because I think, talking, as you said, it allows you then to be yourself. It allows you to thrive. And yeah, we all have cargo that we need to deal with. And some of it can be long term, some of it can be short term. But I think for me, what's really important is I want people getting out of bed in the morning, not dreading coming into work because they've got to pretend to be something else. I want them to go, actually, I want to go to work. Because if you have somebody who doesn't want to be there, they're not going to give you their best.
No. And it's that whole kind of thing. You want people to feel like they are accepted here for who they are, for whatever cargo, like you say, they might have. And that having that whole inclusive network, which is what the ONETEAM is all about.
But that one team spirit, how much has that changed and evolved since you've been here?
I think when I first started, it was focused on teamwork as it relates to the job, and that was the focus. You were one team. You did the job, and there was the socialization and things afterwards, but it was more focused in terms of, it was quite, your team socialise together, and there was still, even then there was a push, but obviously it was easier because we were smaller. I joined and we were 60 people.
Yeah.
So you did know everybody. So there didn't need to be as much of a focus on getting everybody together. It just happened naturally. And I think as we've grown, there were teams in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, people that I've never seen except online. And there's been much more of a focus push to make sure that people are the people you're working with, and that kind of a greater understanding, I think, that, people are people outside of work, and knowing more about that builds that trust. And our DM values is trust, and for me that's the biggest thing. When you know somebody and you know somebody well, you instinctively as a human being are more inclined to kind of build on that trusting relationship, and that means you have high performing teams, you have people that get on with each other, and that just naturally means that everybody works better together.
You got a big job now.
Yeah, so I came in as a junior coordinator, and changed very quickly into taking on kind of more responsibilities. But then there was a real shift in terms of the type of project management that we do in the company, and I very much kind of looked at the job role and was like, yes, that is me, that's what I want to do. It's organisation, it's data, it's spreadsheets, it's it's motivating teams, it's people based as well as job based. Project management is about managing people, not just projects. And I knew that there was somebody I could go to and I could say, look, this is what I want to do, this what job will make me really happy. And I was fully supported in taking those steps. And I think having that environment where you feel so comfortable in taking that, it meant a big role change for the team as well. There were impacts, who's going to do the job I was doing, but I never felt that any of that was a blocker, because it was, talking about not just my job role, but actually what makes me happy, what my drive is in coming to work, what motivates me in the morning, which when you have the opportunity to explore that within your job role, that really helps in supporting your mental health and well-being as well.
And Josh, I mean, you've been here 2 and a bit years. You've obviously got lots of experience with other employers, and I think I'd be quite, you've had 2 years here to see how we tick, and I'm sure you've seen change in those 2 years as well, but I'd be quite interested to hear kind of your 2-year journey really in terms of how you've seen things develop.
So one of my previous employers, the mental health support there wasn't all that brilliant. It was just kind of get on with it sort of thought mentality, which I always thought was actually quite disappointing at the time. So when it came to moving to DM, the kind of there was bits and pieces, obviously, with the with some of the support through Vitality. There was some bits and pieces through Lionheart, but it wasn't necessarily there in your face to know where to go if you needed to do something like that. The employee assistance program was there, but again, if you didn't know about it, you wouldn't have known. And then kind of over the last 2 years, it's really blossomed and really grown into something more. It started out with a bunch of us kind of being like a mental health kind of support network, just putting in little bits of ideas, maybe we could do a yoga thing for mental health awareness and these bits and pieces. And then it just started to gain more and more traction. And I remember I think I'd only been in the company 6 to 8 months, and there was the Mental Health Awareness Week where people, were volunteering to put up stories for what they had been through. And I'll be honest, when I came to the company, I wasn't necessarily sure that would be something that would have kind of been openly accepted with kind of open arms or recognised. And actually the support that came out from so many people within the company for people's stories was genuinely mind-blowing. And it kind of beat that kind of you think with your eyes sort of thing. It was genuinely groundbreaking, I thought. And
I think that's one of my favourite things we've done.
Yeah,
It's such a small
100%. So I even shared like my personal stories on there, and there were some things that, I've been in my partner 14 years, and it took over 10 years for me to voice some of that to her, and then to put that out to a company which I literally kind of still quite green in was a big step, and it was fantastic to see the support from everybody in the company, to say that you've done well to get this far, or you've done well to get through this.
Yeah.
So it really does kind of beat that stigma that some people might initially have on something, like when they have a prejudice almost.
Yeah. One thing also, I think, and this is just me really, but I think a lot of people, if for people who don't think they have mental health, I think one of the challenges they have is to understand it and to understand how to deal with it. So I'm a fixer. I like fixing things. So you always think it's a fix, but I've learned over the years that you can't fix it, and actually, it's nothing you can't. As someone who's trying to help somebody, you can't fix it. They've got to fix it. You've got to be just there to support. And I think that's quite tough for people to get sometimes.
Yeah, I always start off whenever I'm talking to somebody about how they're feeling is I ask them that question. So I'm a fixer as well. And my first instinct is to go in with, can we do this?
Yeah.
And I now ask, do you want solutions or do you want someone to listen? Do you need space or do you need advice? And that can be really powerful as a tool, because people need different things at different points in their journey. And they might just need some space to talk, but they might want you to help, but they don't know how to ask. So asking that question.
And that's exactly it. Some people don't necessarily have a fix in mind for something that might be going on in their personal lives, or it could be a work life, issue. Somebody, just might need to vent because they've had a really tricky conversation with a landowner on a site meeting, and they just might need to vent about it, or they might, further from that, they might kind of go, okay, actually next time, how can I approach this in a different way that might, reduce conflict, for example. But a situation like that with a surveyor or a graduate going out to do a site meeting, they might not have done one before. It might be their first one. And if they're met with somebody that might be a bit more confrontational, could really set them back going, down the future, when it comes to APC bits and pieces like that, it could be really difficult.
Yeah.
It's actually, we can either just listen and say, okay, would you like to know what I might have done in this scenario, for example? Or possibly say, perhaps next time, just take somebody with you, take a support network with you, so you won't feel so alone in a situation like that, for example. And you can apply it to so much.
And I think, again, it comes back to that trust point. And I think one of the things that I think we now do quite well is encouraging people to take that time and space away from the work life to get to know each other a bit better, because you're not going to feel comfortable talking to a line manager or any other colleague about some really difficult things in your life if you don't trust, if there's not that bedrock there. And I think one of the things that has most evolved that I've seen recently is that the ways that we encourage people within the company to get to know each other better has evolved to be more inclusive. And having that space where it's openly encouraged to take that time away from the job. And you don't get that in everywhere.
No.
I've definitely worked in places where, you're not encouraged to socialise or talk to people. Or, work, productivity, and there's that push. And actually having that space.
How dare you socialise on work hours?
And I think, we don't get everything right at DM. Absolutely, we don't. And we're, life is all about learning and moving forward. But I guess one question I got for you guys is kind of what does good look like? I think we hopefully try as hard as we can to get things right, and we evolve and change and have done so. But what do you guys think good looks like?
I think a good mental health is usually you're going to have somebody that might be like really productive, or might be sociable, for example, or might be willing to do X, Y, and Z. But I feel like if somebody has poor mental health and might be a little bit more withdrawn, for example, it's really difficult because you can see it but it's such a hard thing to explain because everybody would do.
Do you think we're
things
quite good at spotting that? Because I know exactly what it's the empathy bit almost, isn't
Yes,
it?
exactly.
It's trying to, what's wrong? They're not on form.
Yeah. So you might be able to, in people that you trust or you know well, that you might see patterns that are a little bit irregular. But I always find from a good mental health perspective, like I say, it's somebody that's coming up, that is being productive, that is more sociable, is more willing, is more kind of, I would say, like, have a better efficiency percentage. And I feel like if that's poor, you're going to have a lot less. But that's the way I personally see it.
Yeah. But coming at that with just that really authenticity, that where it's coming from a good place. And like you said, it's not just a tick box exercise, that genuinely we're pushing this further and extending this inclusivity and just making sure that, there's all of those different types of people are represented in our support networks and our support our support kind of task things that we're doing. And I think that takes it from just a really good mental health approach to a really great approach to supporting mental health.
One thing I'd just kind of also be interested to know, because is, so we have all, in terms of ticking boxes, right? We can tick boxes. We've got helplines. We've got, like you talked about Lionheart. We've got all these things that are up there on our hub that you can do. But it's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's all the little things, I think, that make the big picture. The way I kind of like try to word it, it's like if you're making food, you can either just go to the one-stop shop and buy a microwave meal, or you can have all of these little ingredients that just improve everything in a bigger picture. And I think that's what DM are really starting, or are kind of really running with. It's not like, okay, it's Mental Health Awareness Week, let's get the tick button. No, it's not that. It's an all year round thing. It's something that's started and will be continued on for 10, 15, 20 years. It's not just a one-stop shop.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that you said earlier, James, was that, it's that acknowledgement that we're not there yet. Because nobody will ever be there. I think if you're sitting there going, we have the best mental health, but there's nothing else that we can do. I think you've kind of lost the battle at that point. If somebody sat there doing that, it's that that push and that drive to always be better for the people within your company. And sometimes, it's exhausting to be who you think you should be all the time and having to suppress parts of yourself. And there's a lot of people that do that every day in small ways and in big ways. And knowing that, there's that space and that trust, and that the company is always kind of having that push, for me, I think it makes that real safe space.
Yeah. And I think to extend on that, it's kind of, you might have, usually people are either introverted or extroverted. So when we have like kind of our social events, it's not catered to, some people that are naturally introverted don't want to go and do something where it's like really big and social and lots of talking and big crowds. But a lot of the socials, there's always like a very good mix. So all types of people can get involved with something like that. It's not like, you have to be like really sporty because we're going to play paddle every month, or it's something that.
And I think that is a challenge. Certainly, in terms of our executive team, we spend a lot of time talking about, well, how do we make sure that actually, we make this place as inclusive as we possibly can, and whether that be an event or whether it be day-to-day life, we need to make sure that we're providing the right environment for everybody.
And I think you mentioned that, your discussions with like the exec team and stuff. From your point of view, in terms of like the exec team, what sort of discussions do you have like around mental health and how?
So I think it's kind of it's more about, obviously mental health is a big part of it, but I think it's more about the whole DM environment. In that, when I set up DM some time ago, 22 years ago, I'd come from a very traditional background. My previous employer was very traditional, and I absolutely did not want to create that. And we wanted to make sure that we were creating something that was very people focused. After all, we are a people business. We're about relationships. That's what we are all about, and we're never that's not going to change. Okay, technology is going to help us, but we're still ultimately going to be a people focused business. So, what in my head, if you're going to create a successful business that is very people focused, you need the people in the business to be part of that drive. And if they're not, if they're just individuals sat on chairs being different, it's not going to work. So that was always kind of the fundamental things we wanted to be people focused. Now that has changed and evolved over the years as we've grown. You were talking earlier, when we were 30, 40, 50, 60 people, it's a lot easier because you can get them all in a room, they all know each other, everybody's name, and it's quite easy. Now we're 600, it's a very different ballgame, but it has its challenges. But I think in terms of things we're definitely focused on is, we want to make sure that we do get people turning up to work as themselves. We want to make sure that there is support there for people, so that actually, we don't have downtime, we don't have a retention problem, we don't have all these things that are going to make the business not tick the boxes it needs to.
If I may ask a question,
it's not going to work like this.
We switch the roles. Where would you like to see some of the improvements with what's going on with DM and the mental health culture and things like supporting neurodiversity and inclusivity? Where would you like to see a further increase of that?
So I think as the world evolves, I think because in my head there's obviously there's all these other things you can add on. Like there's the mental health, there's neurodiversity, all these things, and there's also generational changes. Old git that I am. You look at the Generation Zs that are in, they're very different, and I think more for you if you don't understand them and you don't try and understand what their drivers are. I think there's got to be a meeting somewhere in the middle. But if you just try and push them down a route of, well, this is my way and it's my way or the highway, it doesn't work. I have two very dyslexic children, so I know all about how that works and how unfair it is, really, how the educational system really doesn't help them. But actually, I know that people like that actually have a lot to bring, and if you're really clever about it, you give them the opportunity because they will bring real benefit to a business. So
100%.
That's where you've got to focus the mind. So I think there's always things to do. I think what you got to be careful about is you don't jump on one bandwagon. I think there is we're not here to wave a flag. And be on a particular bandwagon. We've got lots of different people in the business that we need to cater for here. We just need to make sure we've got everything in place to cater for them. So that's kind of where I see it going.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, like you say, as everybody's mental health is so individual to them, and it's making sure that you've got that wide breadth of support and kind of consideration, because even if you're mentioned dyslexia, like one dyslexic person's challenges are very different to somebody else's, and it's everybody, and I think that's one of the things with the eminence, like you said, it's not just individual sat on chairs, it's everybody has those individual journeys, but it's bringing that together and how we support each other as a team, as a one team together, so that everybody has those connections and that opportunity to learn from one person. One person's struggles, but also one person's strengths. That learning from each other and having those kind of individual connections, I think, is so important.
Yeah, but I think if you look at I think the world is changing, and I'm really pleased it is, because I think everybody used to be ranked on how many A levels they got, or it was.
I don't know. This is my turn to come.
It was all academic, right? And if you didn't get your triple A's or whatever it was, then you were consigned to somewhere over here. And the world has moved on a lot from that, because I think actually you've got to realise that academia is a very small part, and particularly in the world we work in, where it's very relationship focused. Empathy is a massive big skill. You can't you don't get examined on.
I think that's whenever people want to come and speak to us on the mental health first aid team, it's not about I don't want you to feel sorry for me. Again, it's like, need to listen, or what advice do you need? Because the last thing that somebody in a bad situation or an uncomfortable situation, whatever they may be in, they don't want you to feel sorry for them, because it's just going to make them feel worse. It's understanding the right times to have it.
Well, it's being there for them, isn't it? I mean, that's to know that they can actually tell you about what the problem is. Now, you might not be able to do anything about it, but it's just being able to have someone that you can go, this is my problem.
We can't diagnose somebody with something.
No.
That's completely not our remit.
Yeah.
But what we can do is recognise and say, okay, I feel you might benefit from X, Y, and Z, or have you tried A, B, and C?
Yeah, but what I've learned from my own personal experience with all of that is that it's all good to give them ideas of what to do, but the key thing is that person's got to want to do it.
Absolutely, 100%.
And I think if you try and force anyone to do something, guarantee it won't work.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you've got to show them where the opportunities are. Yeah, but they've got to get there.
For me, I think as a company supporting somebody who, we have the puzzles and things which can hopefully help support people within the workplace before they get to that point. But if someone's having a mental health crisis, it's about, okay, right, let's be honest what's happening here and how can we help you get through, because everybody still needs to work. It's still it's still that there's still a job to be done, and it's how can we make sure that you're getting what you need to be able to get through this crisis back to a place where we can then begin positive going forward and with healing and then getting back. And it's making sure that we are open with our employees and with our colleagues in that we're here to help to facilitate what what does your working day look like, what is particularly difficult for you while you're in this crisis point. And a crisis, hopefully with the right support, should be fairly short-lived.
Yeah, and I think hopefully this is the view that we take at DM, is that actually people coming to DM, we look at them for the long run. We're not in for people coming in and jumping out. We want them to be part of the team, and we want them to stay as the team. And of course, like any business, we're going to have people who don't. But that's the way I think we should be looking at them. So when you talk about managing an issue or a problem, you want to be looking at it in the long run. So that actually, it's a benefit.
And I think things that DM does really well is kind of encouraging those kind of long-term kind of connections and that kind of.
Yeah,
definitely.
Brilliant. Okay. So I think we've talked on some really good topics actually today, and I think you both of you came in here at the beginning going, well, how's this going to run? How are we going to talk about it? I said, don't panic, it will happen, and I think it's flowed really well today. So I think we've covered some really interesting topics. But I would just like to say, what we finish is thank you to you two, because I know you've all had a big impact in terms of DM, in terms of pushing the right agendas forward and all that kind of stuff. So keep doing the good stuff. And as I say to everyone who comes on the podcast, is we will get you back for an update in a couple of years' time, and you can tell us what else has happened, changed. But thank you for your time today, guys.
Thank you for having us.